I still remember the moment of going up. My office was upstairs, and going upstairs to do my first ever paid reading, because getting paid for it, that was another thing, you know. But I can still remember that, thinking, what am I doing? But what am I doing? But there was still there was a leap of faith and fear, but there was exhilaration that overrode everything else.
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schusler. Today I'm talking to the funny, down-to-earth, and delightful Cara Wilde. She's the founder of Soul Inc. She's a channeler who helps others channel their guides, and she's the host of the podcast The Way of the Sensitive. Listen as she talks about her journey leaving conventional therapy behind, creating Soul Inc., creating an online course, and now a podcast. Cara Wilde, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Therapist Clubhouse.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So you are a channeler, and you help other people channel their guides, which you call dialing home.
Yeah.
And you say channeling is simply the ability to connect with non-physical energy and translate into words and practical guidance. For people who aren't familiar, can you explain channeling a little bit more?
Yeah. So the way that I tend to explain it is everybody channels anyway. So we channel emotions. When we feel those sensations and we have those experiences, we put thoughts and words to them. So that's like the basis of channeling. But what happens as you open up to what I call the non-physical, you open up to a wider and wider perspective. So when you're channeling emotions, you might just be focused on fear and then everything that's contained within that. But then as you expand, you grow into a more, it's like that wider perspective is from a viewpoint of unconditional love. That's the best way. So it's like it's wider, but it's also higher. And when we have those aha moments, or what my tribe tends to call downloads, that's the same process.
Can you tell us about, I was really intrigued with this, the point of perfect potential?
So that was a phrase that my guides, Aurora, the first collective that I worked with, came up with in a session. From a therapeutic point of view, it's the one area of your life that if your client focused on, it would kind of clean up the rest. It would have the biggest impact. So they used to say the point of perfect potential, and being at peace with that, combined with the anticipation of a future, that's bliss. That point of perfect potential is like where all your energy is probably stuck and stored. And if you just freed that up, you'd be off.
So this isn't always the way that you worked, right? So in 2010, you did a personal ceremony and cast a circle of light in your back garden. And then you say your life changed. So will you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I transitioned from working for a charity. I was working with people who were dependent on alcohol. And I decided to move from that and set up in my own practice, combining the energy work that I'd done with my therapeutic understanding. And I was still getting frustrated. I was in this pagan group, and I was seeing all my kind of friends and peers who were really connected at that non-physical level, but their lives weren't working and they were really struggling. And I really wanted to make sense of how to bring that blissful state that I experienced when I went into a channeling state with some of the clunky stuff that kind of happens in our lives, and how we can blend the two. So I did that ceremony to cast a circle of light, and then asked for guidance on that issue, and kind of started to receive information. And basically I went on my own soul journey to answer that question for myself, and I left a marriage that had turned into a friendship. I moved to a different part of the country where I needed to be with the land. And then I started verbally channeling my guide, and that's when my new business grew. So it completely changed everything from that one question, that one intention to find that answer.
And so before that, were you starting to get a sense that you were going to need to leave more conventional counseling behind?
When I was working in conventional counseling, I was already a Reiki master teacher, and I had my own practice at home. And what I was seeing in my kind of traditional mainstream clients is just working with the cognitive shifts and the behavioral shifts. So I was trained in CBT, was creating a lot of this revolving door syndrome, and people would go and be okay, but they needed to be just constantly getting that support and in that community. But then in my Reiki practice, I was seeing when we worked at an energy level, people were having huge shifts and things were happening more effectively, but they didn't have the psychology to understand how to implement it properly in their lives. So I'd already found emotional freedom technique, which kind of combined the two. It's like energy and psychology together for me.
Yeah.
And I knew that I needed to practice on that, but I wasn't expecting channeling to come. That completely threw me. And that was just something that happened to me. It kind of felt like a bit beyond my control, but I can see now that I can look back and see everything just unfolded perfectly. But I never expected to be verbally channeling.
Wow. Do you remember a particular moment when you realized that you needed to bring verbal channeling into your business?
Yeah. So not long after I moved and relocated and did my own kind of soul journey, I met my partner, and he wanted to learn about Reiki and meeting a guide. So one night while he was following my instructions, I got bored. And so I was just like, oh, let's go and see who wants to play, and just kind of went to visit these guides. And I'd only just met him, and this being said he wanted to talk through me. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? I'm still wanting to impress this guy. You're asking me to do what? But thankfully he was just like, bring it on. So we started channeling, and then I got a message for a friend of a friend, and we passed that on. He wanted a reading, which I'd never thought of doing, but I did. And then he happened to have a mailing list, which I know what one of those is now. I didn't know at the time, but he had a mailing list of about 3,000 people and just raved about it. And I got all these requests, and we were kind of building the website and the business around the requests that were coming in. It kind of it came from play, you know, and I think that's a really interesting concept. What I consider now my life's work. I'm 45, and it's took me until 4 or 5 years ago to really find my life's work. But my life's work came through just play. I really like that.
Yes. And I'm 45 too. There's something really awesome about this age. Yeah. So a lot of times people think of making a change in their business as something that has to be really thought out and, you know, very logical. And so something happened really organically for you.
For sure. And it just made complete sense. So even though there were leaps of faith, I still remember the moment of going up. My office was upstairs, and going upstairs to do my first ever paid reading, because getting paid for it, that was another thing, you know. But I can still remember that, thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? So there was a leap of faith and fear, but there was exhilaration that overrode everything else.
Yeah. So a lot of our listeners are therapists who have a feeling that they want to do something more or something different, and they're in more conventional private practices, and they're feeling afraid or stuck. What would you tell them about making a leap and trying something that they feel excited about, but that's kind of out of the mainstream?
Well, two things, because I think we always have a bit of an inkling. You know, you've kind of alluded to that anyway, but I think we always kind of have a bit of an inkling, or we've got a thread to follow. And I suppose the biggest thing that comes to mind is there is always something to land on the other side, but there's always people there that want what you've got to offer, always. And I think if you come from a conventional background, you know, where you're used to plugging into something that's already set up, that can feel a bit like, well, people only want what's already there, and they're thirsty for more. People are wanting, it's not that they're wanting new, but they're feeling the same calling that you are, and you're their answer. That's kind of how it works, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think of it as that we all have superpowers that we're really meant to use. And most of us are really meant to use them much more than we're using them.
Yeah. And I've had an example of that today. So this morning I was the book, The Big Leap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was with a client this morning who is a channel. And what I do is I help people stabilize their channels so that channels can bring their work into the world. Like I create channels. That's what I get to do. Who would think, at school, what do you want to do? So I got to do that, and I got to interview somebody from my podcast this afternoon over like something that I'm really passionate about. Time flew. I loved it. It felt like play. I just felt like I was in the right place. So that's that whole zone of genius.
Mm-hmm.
And I was energized by it. It energized me. And then this afternoon, I had to do some tech work on my website. I had to do a pop-up. And that is not my zone of genius. That's nowhere near. And I was shattered. I was tired. It was frustrating. I think we're kind of conditioned in our society to like hard work and struggle, and you've got to power through. And actually, it is a lot more playful. And the way to recognize that calling or that work or that thread that we were talking about is that sense of, it just feels there's ease about it. There is a sense of ease and rightness and natural. And if you're in work that's like clunky and hard and frustrating, there's something better there for you. Your superpower is not getting out to play.
Yeah. And I like this word that you used, inkling, like to look for the inkling of, what it is that you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's my nana's phrase. I didn't even realize I said that.
So and maybe you don't even care about this at this point at all, but do you remember how your colleagues reacted when you changed the way you were working?
Well, I'd already left and set up my private practice in a different part of the country by that time. However, I remember vividly when I was working in mainstream practice, I was always really open that I did tarot readings back then. I told clients, and people are fascinated, and it never occurred to me to not say anything. And I started offering Reiki treatments within the counselling practice, the charity that I worked for. But when I was talking about working with what I call the angelic realm and that kind of thing, my boss just turned around and just went, "We don't have angels here." Okay. What happened with clients is another thing, but I was tolerated. I had enough skills in the areas that mattered that it became something that they paid attention to and tolerated. So I didn't get any criticism for it as such, but I was restricted. I wouldn't have been able to grow into my superpower or my zone of genius in that place because their beliefs got in the way of me being able to utilize that. It wasn't proper practice.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm also hearing, though, there's a way that you've already been, even earlier on, you were kind of a rebel and doing what you felt was right, which just kind of tells me that's maybe a good lesson for the therapists I'm talking about who have some part of their work that they're kind of hiding, that they're kind of, not sure they should put on their website or not sure they should tell their colleagues about, that even if they're not at the place where you're at now, that there's value to letting that part out and getting some practice with being a little bit rebellious.
It is a rebellious kind of nature, but I'm such a recovering good girl, really. Yeah. So I felt that tug, that real, like, do I have permission? And that real tug between wanting to do a good job, and be responsible, and following this felt irresponsible. But when you are over-responsible, feeling irresponsible is a good thing,
Sure, like to bring it into balance. Who do you find now that you're typically working with?
I'm kind of shifting a little bit. So my one-to-one readings were kind of for anybody, but mainly for healers and people that had got not a therapeutic background, but an understanding of that process. Then I started the mentorships, and it all came back to that circle and the vision that I had in that circle. So I think a point to remember as well is, and I'll answer your question better in a minute, but is I grew into the vision that I had. When I first started my business, I just did what was in front of me and what I could. Now I've grown into the vision that I had at the beginning, which was I just saw channels of light everywhere. So now I work with people that are channels or that want to be channels, and I'm making it a profession again. That's my big calling, because it's an ancient profession whose time's come again for me, and to get it validated. So people that are either really connected to the non-physical, but they need their physical life stabilizing. So I tend to say we're kind of open from the heart chakra up, if you know the chakras, but the bottom 3 chakras to do with physical reality and all them emotions and all that kind of stuff, they're shut. So my tribe tend to enjoy traversing dimensions, but they're not sure about physical reality. That's the main bit, because that's been my journey, is feeling safe in physical reality and not escaping.
How was it finding out who your tribe was? Was that an easy process? Did that have like bumps in the road?
At the beginning, it was just, anybody, I can work with anybody. I'll serve anybody. Just let me do my thing. And then it was just let me pay my bills, that whole, all of it. And then finding my tribe was just going and talking to people on Facebook and being in groups and just offering help, and then really noticing what felt good to offer and exciting to offer. And also, to a certain extent, let my clients and let the people that I was in contact with kind of like help me shape my message. So it's been a real co-creation.
You don't just decide who you work best with. You listen and listen and listen and kind of hone in on that.
Yeah. It's a discovery. So now I absolutely have the course, and I teach people that don't know how to channel to open up and to receive it. And we get together and we have channeling circles where we all channel together as a group and the collective, which is just divine. But also in my one-to-one sessions, there's a person who is channeling their guides, and then I'm channeling mine, and then we're working together as the human beings as well. And that has been a relatively recent development, as I did my Channeling Your Guide program, and then people that were really connecting to their guides were telling me the next level that they wanted. So I had all these ideas of all these things that I could do. But as I worked with people, I could see, okay, they're at that stage of the journey, and now they're asking me for more. It's more organic that way.
Really listening to what they need next.
Yeah.
How many offers do you have right now?
I have 3 main offers. So I have the Channeling Your Guide program, which is an online course with a Facebook community and monthly calls. We tend to squeeze more in because we like it so much, but that's the outside. Then I have the Mentorship Program, which is a longer package, and that's the more intense one-to-one, where people have worked both with me and my guides. And then I have the one-to-ones where they just get a channeled reading from my guide, which is kind of like, that's the beginning stage. So that's the overall, like, these are your lost dreams. These are the things that you've put off. These are the bits that are calling you. This is like your soul calling. And these are your blocks. So they come in and that's what's getting in the way. That's what's anchoring you to your old self-image and your past and your conditioning. And sometimes that's enough, especially because they're healers and they've got all the coaches and they've got their own processes. And sometimes they want a bit more. And that's when they come into the mentorship program.
And do any people do the Channel Your Guide program and then also one of the other individual programs?
Yeah, they do, which is just that's really blown me away, that I have clients that just want to stay around and want to keep working, because, and your listeners will probably be the same, because it's this therapeutic process is kind of still what I'm doing, just from a different vantage point. You can use the same process at different points of people's journey, at different points of their life. So my tribe want to live a certain way. They have certain values. They have certain priorities that are unique to what I've got to offer. Or, there's other people that do the same kind of thing, but they're unique to what I want to offer. And so I can work with them at different points on their life journey.
Yeah, it's not one and done. It's
no.
Like, this worked and now I'm at another place and I need to do more of it. And then I'm imagining if people are in the Channel Your Guide program that they are also probably craving community with other people who have the same values.
Yeah. And so that was the birthing of the podcast, really. So I was noticing a lot of my tribe are what's called highly sensitive people. So they're sensitive. Some of us are on the autistic pathway because of how our society defines that. And I was seeing people that were kind of got their self-worth, just didn't have the self-worth that they needed because they were trying to fit into a society that's kind of a bit broken, instead of seeing that they were here to create a new way and that their unique needs were calling out for society to come up with different solutions, and that's what we need. So my podcast is for misfits who want to belong on their own terms. And that's part of my business, but that's also a passion project. I've got 2 children that have got unique needs that don't fit into things. I home educate them. And that was the birthing of the podcast, that kind of feeling like I wanted to support this new tribe by calling in all these different experts that could support them holistically in living in a completely different way, that would then release their superpowers. They would feel good about themselves and belong, really belong, and find places to belong.
I'm an HSP and I have 2 kids, and one of them is definitely also highly sensitive. So this is just music to my ears. The podcast is another place where people can just get that kind of nutrition of like, okay, I'm not broken. I have something to offer, and my quote unquote problems are actually related to my superpowers and what I have to offer.
Yeah, for sure. I love that description of nutrition, the podcast being nutrition. Yeah, because I'm sure very much like you, I've seen my children almost, believe that there's something wrong with them because they can't fit in the same way, and repairing that has taken time. My kids are here to paint the world a beautiful colour. I've got no doubt of that. I'm a bit biased, but, and I think one of my callings is that I think our uniqueness is part of the global solutions that we're all looking for. And I think if all of us could unleash that authentic, unique, like your listeners are struggling to kind of unleash that part of themselves, that part of themselves that's dying to be unleashed is exactly what the world needs to build everything. Who knows what solution they can come up with, what pathway they can come up with. I get very excited about that.
And if they're hiding their gifts, then that's really unlikely to happen. How did you know it was time to build an online course?
People were asking me to do it. So people were wanting to learn how to channel. And I also wanted some passive income. So people were getting connected with their guides on one-to-one sessions, but it was more like people experienced the experience me doing it. And they're like, I want some of that. I want some of that. Yeah. So I did a few group live channeling sessions as well. So we had a hot seat where people came up in front of the audience and I channeled for them. This surprised me, but the biggest impact that channeling has on people is the answers that they get, the problems that they get, the solutions for, but it's seeing that blending. And I think because I've thought about this quite a bit, and I think because it's such an authentic expression of me, I think it's kind of what I was born to do, to channel. I know it sounds really cliched, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an authentic thing for me. People find authenticity magnetizing. And so they want to experience that. And so for your listeners that feel like they're not being authentic, people are really drawn to that. And I know it's a big buzzword at the moment. I know it can be used in marketing, but you can tell when somebody's not being authentic,
Yeah.
So in terms of letting that thread out, in terms of like coming out from hiding behind the shadows, if you take that risk, you'll magnetize more people, and if your business is struggling, they need to see that. They need to see that authenticity.
Yes. Instead of actually what a lot of people do is like, oh, I better really do what I think people want more of and be less of this other maybe like weird thing. And that it's really the opposite of what they have to do. So how did you get the word out about your course? Did that happen organically?
I already had a list, an email list. So I told my email list, and then it was word of mouth from people that experienced it.
Excellent. That's the best. Did you invite people for a beta run of it?
A beta run? I had so much resistance to this course because I'd never launched myself in that way before. I'd never been seen in that way before. So the course is, that's not a new thing, but I'd done video, and I was so shy, so painfully shy, but I was part of like an informal video blogging group. We just got together and we were doing really silly blog posts and just within the group. And that built my confidence up.
Great idea.
Yeah, it really worked. It is. I would recommend that. And then I did the video. I had the kind of template of the sessions and how I wanted to do it. And I think I recorded the course 3 times over, scrapped it all, started again, and I didn't need to. And then I got a friend to look at it. And then when she said it was awesome, I thought, right, well, she's just been nice. So then I actually got somebody that I knew wanted to do channeling and asked them to do it and see what their experience was before I even put a price point on it or launched it there. And I already knew that she'd been involved in some other communities that didn't do the same thing, but was similar. So she was a healer. And she just came back and said, get it out now. It's just, it's brilliant. I'm like, oh, okay, I will then. And that was it. But no, it was terrifying.
Yeah, even for you, even where you were at that point, it was still terrifying. So launching something just is terrifying. I think that's so good for people to know.
It is. And the readings, when I originally gave the readings and the one-to-one sessions, I suppose they were quite similar to the tarot readings that I'd done years ago. So it was kind of like the next step. But doing an online program and doing a course and thinking about all the structure, and even though I'd done adult group programs before live in the charity that I worked for, it's not got that same organic. I'm really good when it comes to organic. So put a person in front of me and we can just go for it. But think about how to put things together in a way that supports people through a process is a completely different experience. And that's what was throwing me. I was scared that people weren't going to get what I wanted them to get from it. That I'd not designed the course properly or good enough kind of thing. But
you had, right? Like your intuition kind of had you setting it up the right way.
Yeah. And the actual doing of it was easy. It was the evaluation of it.
Yeah.
So it was the critical analysis of it that my inner critic just went on a rampage.
Yeah. Outside of the online course, what do you find your optimal balance is for how many sessions you like to have every week?
That depends on, at the moment, I've got 2 kids that I'm home educating. That's a relatively new thing. So I tend to just look at my energy levels, to be honest. So sometimes when I haven't got anything much going on big in my life, when there's no other big changes going on, I've got more energy for clients. But other times, or if I've got a personal issue going on and I'm getting therapeutic support myself, then I kind of, back off. So it's very fluid. I don't have a set amount. But I do have particular days of the week when I'm available, and I don't tend to do Mondays and Fridays. They're for business things. I tend to have my clients in the middle of the week.
I do that too. I really it seems like that's a lovely kind of energy to the week. Yeah. So I like how you're saying that you kind of follow more of what yourself is telling you is right for right now.
Yeah. Otherwise I crash. So you probably know, if you're sensitive as well, that I'm easily stimulated. In a session, I can take things in really quick and spot things and spot patterns, that kind of process. But then other areas of just life in general can just take me a while to process and feel into it and feel what I want to do with it. So that's how I got burnt out working at the charities. I was on call 24/7, dealing with high need clients and working in a very busy, full-on job, and didn't know that my sensory needs meant that I needed to spend quite a lot of alone time, quite a lot of time in nature, snuggle blankets, that kind of deep restorative rest. I need pockets of that through the week to charge. And I don't ever want to get burnt out like I did before. So I really take care of that as much as I can. And I trust timing of intuition and flow. I mean, I've got it, or else, or else I'm not doing my job, really. Yeah, just trusting the timing and the rhythm. And that's a work in progress. And that took me a long time to kind of get into and get out of that business go, 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 go mindset.
Yeah, I think it's so good for therapists to hear this because a lot of people I talk to are trying to build a practice that once they've built it, they don't really want. Some people are trying to build a practice where they maybe see 30 clients a week because that's going to meet their income goals and they want to help a lot of people. But what I experience over and over again with therapists is that once they get there, they don't want it because it's burning them out. It feels like too much. So I think it's so good to start out listening to yourself and noticing your rhythms and how many clients actually feel like you can restore yourself and work with that number of clients every day or every week.
Yeah. And also, I think knowing the value that I'm sure that your listeners do, but knowing the value of group work and the online courses, you can serve many more people. Once you've done something in an online course, or even if you're working in groups, my hesitancy was that people wouldn't get the benefit of the deeper work that you can do on one-to-one. But actually, the group dynamics and the group sharing is actually really supportive in a different way. And so they get as much value, but in a different way when you work with a group. And
Yes.
and when you create a group situation, they can support each other in ways that I wouldn't have thought of. I wouldn't have had the ideas. So
And they can believe each other. Like if you're hearing from just one person, even if it's the person who you respect so much, you might think like, oh, she's being nice. But if you hear it from this whole group, it can really resonate deeply. If you could time travel back to the beginning of Soul Inc., would you have any advice for the Cara of that time?
Yeah, charge people, for God's sake. Like it's a business. But I think the biggest thing would be to really tell myself to separate my skills as a channel or a therapist from my business skills. Because when I was struggling in my business and I wasn't being able to pay the bills from just my business, I mistook that for a reflection of my skills level and thought, well, I can't be as good as I think I was, or else I'd have the clients. And it took me a while to think, no, I just haven't got a clue about running a business. I was part of a system that did all that for me. And a charity, it's free at the price of entry for the client. Charging was hard. I started off charging £15 an hour years ago. And then wondered why I couldn't make a business.
Yeah, I know I looked earlier today, but remind me what you charge now.
For an hour session as a channeling session, it's £150.
And so this has only been how many years since you were starting to charge?
Well, in this business, I started off charging £100 for an hour. But my initial private practice, when I was only doing EFT before the channeling, it was £15 for £15 for an hour. And I'm cringing now.
Would you be willing to join me for a listener question?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to read this from Cindy.
Listener question.
This is an overwhelming question, just to alert you.
I grabbed my crystal.
My question is how to prioritize and streamline all the pieces of everything I have to do to maintain an online presence. Blog, SEO, webinars, small or large paid online courses, evergreen sales, analytics, updating and aesthetically enhancing my website, a free course or an opt-in, posting on social media, launches, indoctrination emails, list building, videos, membership site, content upgrades, private pilot coaching, etc., while still doing everything to keep a private practice going, or how to get out of overwhelm mode and still make a living.
Woo. It is, but that could be my head sometimes, where to start and what to prioritize. So I'd say at that, play to your strengths. Play to your strengths to start off with. So SEO is not my strength. My website is not up to scratch with a lot of that, and it'll come. I'm not, meh. But play to your strengths, because that's where your power is and that's where the fun is. And you're going to need to be energized by your business. Let your business energize you. So I love doing video. So I utilize Facebook and YouTube, and I do video blogs because I love to do them. Writing is my least favorite mode. I can do it, but I don't blog very often. I channel and send that out as a blog. The easiest thing is, does it need doing right now? And if not, don't do it. And play to your strengths.
I love that. And that for you, it sounds like it's fairly easy to do the videos and playful.
Yeah. It is now.
Mm-hmm.
It is now because of that process that went through to do that. But I have always loved performing. Mm-hmm. So, it was just giving myself permission to do that as part of my business. And, some of the tech stuff, I do have to just grind down and do it because I want to achieve the objective. But it's an objective I want to achieve, not because some business person's told me that I need to achieve it, or an online entrepreneur free Facebook group has told me to achieve it. It's because I've decided it's your business to take charge of it, enjoy it.
And I would just add, get really clear on what the big goal is that's the most important to you, like whether it's bringing people to your wonderful course or into your practice one-on-one, and then just pick one of those things to focus on at a time, and then just pick the tools that you think are going to be most helpful getting you there. And then I would love adding what you said and pick those tools based on your strengths. And then probably hire, if you can, hire some people who are good at the pieces you don't love, and then weed out. I mean, there's so much in this list that, I know she's really driven and she really has a lot of passion to get her work out there, but I would just slash a bunch of the things that she listed. Just don't worry about content upgrades right now. Just see what you can just get out of the picture for now.
Yeah. And do you mind if I just speak to that about the goal? Because that's a really important point. So I did that recently. So it was Tara Gentili and going on a goal setting workshop. And it was choose your big goal in relation to where you want to be in 5 years' time. And my big goal became my podcast. And it was just my friend's got this saying at the moment, and I love it. So I just had to rip the plaster off because I wanted the podcast. It was just the thing that I was going for, which meant that I had to do a rebranding a lot quicker than I wanted to, which means that I've had to do it imperfectly, and I've had to stick with some tech stuff that was really driving me crazy and learn all about podcast things. But I just decided that I was ripping the plaster off because I wanted that end goal. And so if you're driven, I think you made a really good point, focus on the goal, and then the other stuff can be but it's juicy and it's satisfying to achieve it. It's something to nom on because you know you're going to get there.
Rip the plaster off. I love that. Where can people find you and throw compliments at you?
They can find me over at my website, carawilde.com. And one of the things that I'm opening up is a free Facebook group with the podcast launches live officially tomorrow, The Way of the Sensitive. So there is a free Facebook group with that, which would be just a lovely place to meet up and kind of share ideas. So that's probably the best place for that.
Thank you so much, Cara. This has been incredibly helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Ready for snark moment?
Snark moment.
I'm irritated at how many fictional TV shows and movies have these therapists who sleep with their clients, and they make it seem like it's just kind of a normal thing. I don't sleep with my clients. None of my colleagues sleep with their clients. I know that it occasionally happens and people lose their licenses over it, but if you were to just get your information about therapy from TV and movies, you would think that this is like a really common and normal occurrence. I think it doesn't really help our profession, and I think it really doesn't help people who are looking for therapy to get the idea that that's happening all over the place. Hey, thanks for listening to Therapist Clubhouse. Could you do me a huge favor? I want to bring more therapists into the Clubhouse. Could you take just a minute and leave a rating or even a review on iTunes? I know it's a lot to shift gears when you're doing your thing, but it'll help Therapist Clubhouse get heard by more therapists like you. Thank you so much.